Hey guys, this week we're going to go over our top 5 vehicle recoveries we did while we were traveling around the world.
Yeah. Grab a snack, grab a beer, and come along.
Hey there, I'm Kelsey, that's Tim, and this is the story of our adventure. Life is fleeting, and we want to squeeze every bit out of it. We are wandering the world, so home is a bit of a moving target for us. We love finding the random, the remote, and sharing it all with you. So subscribe to get lost with us and hopefully find some inspiration to go after your own dreams.
Welcome back. This episode is brought to you by Chips and Salsa.
Yeah, it is. There's a lot of fire restrictions right now, so we're not doing our regular barbecues. But it was a good chance to make one of our favorites, some salsa. I did not make the chips, but
this makes us feel like home. Even though our home is not Mexico, somehow salsa, homemade, in the truck, it doesn't matter where you are.
No.
We've made it in Turkey. We've made it in other places in Europe. We've made it in down deep in South America, where they have no good Mexican food, by the way.
All sorts of different spicy peppers.
Yes,
and, yeah,
if you're from South America, the Mexican food there, at least in restaurants that we've had, bears no resemblance.
No.
Somebody told someone else how to make Mexican food via fax machine, and it didn't come through correctly.
I don't think they told them. I think they looked at a picture.
Yes.
And didn't have any idea what it was supposed to taste
like. So whenever we make this, it just feels like home. It's sort of like that familiar taste that we just love.
Yes.
And usually, if you can find some sort of a hot pepper, you can always find a way to make this, because pretty much everywhere in the world we've been has tomatoes, onions. Cilantro can be tougher.
Pretty much, yeah. It has been difficult at times, but when we hit like a bigger grocery store and they have these ingredients, we're always going to make salsa. So it's like a pico de gallo. I'll actually share the recipe with you because it's super simple, but it is so yummy. So yeah, that's that. This episode is brought to you by Antigravity Batteries. We love Antigravity Batteries. We have them as the starter battery, as the house battery. We have our little, what are the little ones called? The MicroStart.
Yeah.
We have carried those for probably 10 years now.
Yeah, I've had those over 10 years now. When they first came out of Overland Expo, no sponsorship, we all went, whoa, that's so much power in a little battery. We've abused them and used them to weld in welding classes. I would not recommend that. But, you know, it was a neat little thing, and they developed into a bigger company that now has all these other batteries we use in everything. So I love that even if we bought a motorcycle, you can shave a bunch of pounds off of a dirt bike, which is always key when you're riding single track by putting it in. And so, yeah, we're fans of it.
Yeah, so you can use our discount code DIRTSUNRISE for 10% off.
And that's Dirt Sunrise, uppercase, lowercase. As long as it's one word, it'll work.
Yep.
So
let's talk about what we came here to talk about.
Let's do it.
All right, so first recovery that we remember is we had just started our trip, and so we were down in Baja, heading just down this sandy road, and we ran into maybe 5 guys in like Ford F-250, like
it was like
older.
To them it was like a commercial truck, so it was probably an 1980s era Ford F-350, something like that. And I think
the starter didn't work because they couldn't. They needed to get it rolling to do like a bump start.
Okay, I have to interrupt because we forgot one minor detail of this story. There was a little 2-wheel drive Nissan that had attempted to pull the big truck out and had also gotten stuck. So we gave it a quick pull before we could tackle the big truck. All right, back to the story.
So it was always kind of like I think most of our recoveries, it was like a myriad of issues, which kind of could all be solved, but but without help, none of them could be. So I don't know, it was kind of a great way to start the trip, just because we've been in Baja so much, we've helped people out before, but I love that right as the trip began, it was like, what is going on here on this sand highway? And then we talked to them for a little bit, and our Spanish is much worse than it was later in the trip. And we off-road up into the sand dunes and around the truck, and these guys were like, oh, wow, you know, like, you didn't get stuck doing that.
This is a heavy truck. So even with Goose's capabilities, I was like, oh, like dead weight, it can't even spin tires to like help. I was like, well, I hope.
Well, which is one reason too, I didn't want to do anything that would compromise Goose. So I wasn't going to try and tow with the wheels turned or in reverse. I wanted to do it first gear, low range, forward with Goose's tires nice and aired down. And at this point in the trip, I think we'd already aired down his tires, and we would leave him aired down for months at a time because we would hit so little pavement in Baja or Argentina. There were certain areas of the trip where you don't go on pavement very much, and so you can leave the tires aired down. So I think I aired them down further, and then I tried to say to the guys, menos aire?
PSI, less air. Sacarle aire.
Menos aire.
Sí, sacarle el aire. Sí. También. Sí.
And then we tried to get our tow strap out, and they're like, no, we have a rope. And so this rope...
Which was the case in a lot of these, which is funny. Like, and if it was a dangerous situation, we would push to have it a different way, but...
If I needed to do like a full speed pull, we would insist on using ours, but it was always like more of a light tug, and these people would come out with a rope with many knots in it from all the times it broke before. And so I looked at it and went, okay, we'll see how this works. And we tied it up to our two trucks.
While they were trying to get unstuck, they had found like trash out in the desert, and they were like trying to get that under the tires as they were going. Everyone was working so hard, which was cool.
So I remember on the final pull, it was like, you know, Kelsey's filming. I know once I get this thing rolling, I can't stop. So I don't know how far I'm going to have to leave her in the Baja desert and come back and get her. The guys are all pushing on the back of the big commercial truck. Commercial to them, but a big truck or whatever. And then Goose, first gear, low range, all four tires sink a little, but you can feel that little bit of forward progress. And so I just keep churning as long as we aren't just going down.
Once we were rolling a little ways, they got the bump start to go, and then the truck could help at least too, and it was started. So once we detached, they could continue on.
And it was wild. So we got it going. We sort of bump started them, and that was the end of that one.
And they were so nice. Like just cheering once the truck got out. And
I love that they said. I said it's Goose. It's muy fuerte. I said yes, muy fuerte, very strong.
So that was a good memory. I think that was the first time we recovered someone on in our travels as we had
in the big trip. Once we'd started, that was the first time. And it was sort of fun because I think it was a nice way to start because. We talk about during these trips, it's hard to put yourself in a position of helping these people in any country, right? Whatever country you're from, once you're traveling, everyone's always helping you, and it's constant. And you do have a little bit of this traveler's guilt of like, man, everyone's so kind. They invite us to random birthday parties and dinners and campsites and places to camp in their yard. Or the guy reaches in and hands us a bunch of food and bread, bread and cheese in a window. That happens constantly. And so anytime you can give back, you feel really good. And you go, all right, I balanced it a little bit, maybe, not fully, but, and so it was a nice way to start the trip and remind us that sort of the way you're going to have your best interactions on this trip are by doing something to help someone. Even if it's minimal. You know, you kind of go, hey, I did one thing for all these nice people.
I think, it reminded us too, to like Tim saying, but I think when we started, we were very focused on like being remote, being away from people. And then it reminds you of how nice interacting with people is and can be. So that was a good one.
So good.
We didn't have margaritas, so we're having a seltzer that's closest to a margarita with our salsa.
Sure, we can call it that. I think it's pretty far from margarita, but that's all right. It's what we got. Second one was a really fun one. I think it was in our intro for a little while there.
Yeah, it might.
And it's still one of my favorite things caught on film. We're driving along, and now we've gotten to one of my favorite parts of Baja that still to this day, you never see anybody. It's just remote enough and the roads are bad enough to get to this section that you'll never see an RV. You usually never see a trailer even.
Yeah.
It just is painful to get out there.
Yeah.
And so we're doing this section of beach, and we look over, and we see a little Toyota pickup truck and a horse. And then at first, nothing. They're just doing something. So we
like
keep driving.
yards off, you know, so
Yeah.
you see off in the distance there's a vehicle over
And
there.
then one guy's like kind of waving. And I was like, wonder what that's
Yeah,
about.
we kinda
Are they
were
just waving like, hey, oh, look, there's someone out here. We're so remote.
Yeah.
There's a person.
Kind of seemed like, I think they might be trying to get our attention.
There may have been like one of
Yeah,
these
we're
two
like,
in there. So we go ahead and we turn and we head down to the beach. And there's this group of guys, this little Toyota pickup truck, and they're working on it. And they say the battery's dead. And they're also stuck in the sand. And it was just kind of like, there's a lot going on here. So we tried to jump start it with the micro start.
And the most unique part was that they had a horse tied to the back of the
Yes,
truck.
and there's a horse there, which you're just like, okay, so if a cowboy came along and is helping him out too. And they all knew each other. And so we tried jump starting the truck with the micro start, but that's not starting it. So they're messing with the timing. So Goose was of the era as well that had a distributor cap. And so, you know, rotating it can change the timing of the engine. So I'm playing with that, trying to help them find the timing that's correct, and we'll get this truck to start.
Meanwhile, like, it's always hard when we're doing, all of these recoveries are hard to capture because Tim and I work well as a team, and so usually I'm, you know, watching something or communicating to him and to the people that we're towing, and capturing it is always a bit tricky, but that's what I was doing. I was just like, cool, this is cool video. I can't do anything to help right now. Tim's trying to help him figure out what's wrong with the truck, so I'm just filming it. And the guy, one of the guys came over.
Yeah.
And he goes, you want to ride the horse? And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, I want to ride the horse. And so I was just like, while they're working on it, I was like, oh, okay. And so, you know, made sure I understood it's all normal how you control the horse, right? And he's like, yeah. And so I just hopped on with flip-flops on, and I'm just riding around.
Yeah. And so I see the GoPro laying on, you know, somewhere where we're working. Maybe it was on the hood of the truck or something. So I grabbed it and got a little footage of her riding. And it was just so hilarious to me that here we are. This is what I hoped the trip would be about, you know, about how are we interacting like friends with these people we've never met. How cool is this? You know, this couldn't happen unless we left and did this.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we're working on the truck. We do eventually get it started. So we get the timing right. We jump start it with the micro start, and now it's stuck. We're all pushing it to get it unstuck. And we didn't have, that one we didn't have to use a tow strap. We could have, but I think we got it moving with just everyone pushing it.
And as soon as I heard the truck start, I was like, okay, like they're good. And I, you know, came back with the horse. And I was like, all right, here's your horse back.
Yeah. And so, yeah, the guy comes back, and first he says to Kelsey,
keep the horse, keep riding it, and when you're done, you know, just take the saddle and the bridle and let the horse go. And there, he told us where the ranch is, and just leave the saddle at the intersection, and we'll find it, and that's that. And I thought, I don't think I'm understanding what he's saying, because that doesn't seem logical. That doesn't seem like what he would be saying. So I was like, oh no, it's okay. Like, we're gonna go find a campsite. Thank you so much, but I'm good. And sure enough, then he proceeds to take the saddle and the bridle off, throw it in the back of the truck, and just let the horse go. And you're like, okay, maybe I didn't misunderstand.
Yeah, so like he's like, yeah, the horse is just out here. We know where it's at. It finds us when it needs water.
The ranch for whatever it needs.
So he really meant just take the horse as long as you feel like riding it. Thank you so much for your help. I can see you're having fun.
Yeah.
And so that was one of those where you go, oh, okay, he was literally saying that.
So kind, and just
then.
amazing.
As the truck is running and we've gotten it sort of on harder ground.
And I'm putting cameras, you know, like doing something, and he comes over to me with a live bunny in his hands and is like, with a knife to its throat, like, huh? And I was like, oh.
Conejo?
Yeah, like, I'm like, oh no, keep it, you know, because they had it underneath, or like underneath the seat.
It was, it was behind, you know, the little flip seats in an old Toyota pickup truck that's really tight space back there behind it. And they just flipped it forward, and there was a rabbit, and he grabs it and he's like, yeah. I was like, oh, we're full, you know, we're good.
And it was like, no, keep it for yourself. Like, thank you so much.
But I got the impression after all that and them walking, getting the horse and riding back, they had been there for a couple days.
I think they had said like they were there they had used the horse to go back to the ranch actually, and then come back to the truck. So they had been there, I think 2 or 3 days, they said, if I remember right,
So it was just cool. I mean, it was just a neat
cool
situation. so many worldly things, and we're probably only 100 miles from the U.S. border, maybe 200 miles from the U.S. border.
Yeah.
And you went, this is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that.
So amazing. Such a unique experience that like I will remember forever.
Yeah, and that continued to happen. They're not all recovery stories, so they're not in this one.
It's not the only time someone let me ride their horse.
Yeah, right?
Bye-bye.
See you later.
See you later.
Now. I have horses and dogs.
Yeah. But it was just continuous. It was like, you know, a day later we went through a guy's ranch.
Yep.
That we were on some really disused roads that had no evidence of use. And that's what we were excited about doing this trip. And we just pull into some guy's yard. And I was like, Lo siento, I don't know
like
where we're going.
Looks like it goes
and he's just like, no worries, come in, have a tecate, and you know, let's look at maps and where are you headed? And oh, cool, that'll be a neat route. And it just continuously happened. So
constantly, yeah. We'll have to do a video on just like
the people,
the interactions with locals that have been mind blowing and that we will remember forever. I dropped some.
Okay, so I remember this one. In fact, some people are right down there on Route 240 in Argentina right now.
Yep.
And I was trying to give them some good campsites.
So the Argentinian rental car is this story.
So we're heading down, and there's a road that on iOverlander it says it's closed. If you look at the maps, it says it's closed. Even Google somehow knew that this road was
like an old route
closed.
that just is not really used any longer.
So we start going down it, and it's rough, and there's times where the road's washed out, but you can tell a 4x4 has gone down into a wash near the road, maybe 50 feet down a steep hill,
Yeah, we keep
and then you
waiting
run the
for
wash.
like the big washout where you're like, oh, you definitely can't get through.
But already cars couldn't at this point. You
Right,
know?
no.
And you get down, and as we're coming around, we get back up on what was once a, not paved, but like was once a better dirt road. And then we see this little, I'm trying to think of what model it was. It was probably like a Kia or a Nissan Sentra, something really small.
Yeah, but I don't remember what brand it was either.
So we're coming down, and we see this tiny little commuter car sort of down in the wash where it shouldn't be, away from the road, and it's pretty well stuck on this sort of silty, not quite sand, kind of silt.
Almost
dirt.
like they were heading down to where the riverbed is, and they didn't even make it all the way down to the riverbed. And I think it was 2 or 3, like I'd say college-age girls, all by themselves. And I think a motorcyclist, an older guy on a motorcycle, had stopped and was trying to help them, but he's on a motorcycle, so there's not a whole lot he can do. So we pulled up, and then not long after we pulled up, a car, or I think it was an SUV, a
pickup truck
of college-age guys showed up, maybe like 4 guys. And I think this was around the time that it was like school break, so all the college kids were out taking their, road trips and doing vacations.
And we weren't far from Mendoza, I think, right? And Cordoba would have possibly been another college town, but it was so neat to see, just like we would do in the U.S., it was a bunch of college kids off on a road trip.
Yeah, having a great time.
Not just like we would have done also when we were younger, not having any sense and going, we'll make it. I know it says closed, but we'll make it. And they had gotten themselves in pretty deep. Now they're down in a wash on a side hill, like, a good angle. And it's in a 2-wheel drive car that's totally bottomed out.
Habanero?
Yeah, Habanero.
Yeah, no, it was neat. It was cool. So we just, pulled Goose up and I think we got our tow strap out and had everybody help pushing. And there was one guy that spoke decent English. And so he was helping like translate. And it just worked out that everyone was like so excited and into it. And I think maybe the older motorcyclist guy hopped in to drive for the girls.
Yeah.
And it was just this big group effort, and everyone was so happy to help and excited to do something nice. Yeah, whenever you're ready. Vamos.
Lots up?
Yep. You got it. Keep going. You're good.
Hello.
Woohoo! ¿Cuánto tiempo aquí?
Sí, 3 horas.
Ah, sí. Keep going, go. There you go. Okay. He's just going fast. going. Keep going. Keep going. And you're free. Yay! And so we got him out of there.
But first, before we got him all the way up the hill, I remember they wanted to continue going up the canyon.
Yeah.
And I was like, you don't know what we've been through to
way.
get here. Now, in Goose, it wasn't a big deal, but I was picturing these big sandy hills. We had gone down from the roadbed into a wash and then climbed back up in four-wheel drive to the road after some washouts. And they're like, no, I think we could make it. This is the worst, right?
That was
this
like
is
the
worst?
first obstacle they had hit coming that way, and we had come all the way the other way, so we had gone quite a lot.
Yeah, we had done 3/4 of the way of this pass.
Yeah.
And they were at 1/4. And I was like, no, this is not as bad as it gets. It gets worse. You have to turn around. So they said, okay. Because when I started towing them basically down the hill as they were yelling,
like,
no, we're going that way. And it was like, you're not going that way. But it was a classic case of their phones had told them that was the way to go.
Yep.
And they were going, period.
Yep.
And so we got them back up on the road. And now they had the college guys to hang out with. And it was like, all right, you guys figure it out and where you're headed. But don't go up the road.
Yeah.
It's not going to be good.
That was a funny one. No harm, no foul. Glad we were there to pull them out.
And it was random because I don't think we'd seen anybody in a couple of days. No. It was a pretty remote area in the sense that where we were up over the pass, we hadn't seen anyone in several days.
Yeah.
And so to all of a sudden come upon this whole thing happening with like, you know, the girls in the car, the guy on the motorcycle, and the college kids.
And you're like, wow, there's so many people suddenly. Yeah. Okay. What are we on, 4? I think that's 4. Number 4.
I think so. Number 4. So we're down in the Paracas sand dunes of Peru. It was an area I had been dying to go to because the Dakar Rally would go through these sand dunes. We had the capability to go deep into the sand dunes and explore. So we've been doing that, been exploring all over the place.
And they're epic. They're so beautiful.
Absolutely beautiful. I had a Dakar Rally stage on my phone that I had downloaded, so we were able to track along that.
That's actually how we found these guys. I think we happened to be, because we were just like, there is a road that kind of goes through there, which is what they came off of, but we were just sort of out in the dunes following a track, and we saw them off. Like,
I remember seeing a truck, so we hadn't seen a vehicle in a while. Yeah. I remember seeing a truck on the road and going, oh, wow, there's someone coming down that road. And it wasn't really a road, but it was the main path through the dunes. And then we're off in the bigger dunes, kind of making fresh tracks, which was sort of the dream I wanted to do of like, you know, it's scary, we could get stuck, we could roll the truck, but let's get out there into the big dunes. We were out in them and I was like, wow, there's a truck out here. We leave the dunes and we're heading back into the smaller dunes where we're going to camp. And I want to make sure that when I shut the truck off for the day, we're somewhere that isn't quite as deep in the middle of nowhere. And then we hear this engine revving and we come over a dune and there's just maybe, what was a half mile from the road. They had left the road, gotten stuck in a place where no one could see them, and we pop over a dune and they're right in front of us. And it's like, you guys are so lucky right now. So
lucky, because they were, I mean, pretty remote. I don't know, it could have been days before anyone even drove along that road, and walking out would have been a long ways for sure.
Yeah. Definitely a couple days worth of walking. And it's the desert and it's hot. And in a lot of these countries, in Ecuador and Peru in particular, when you saw a pickup truck, it was usually a government agency of some sort. And so it was a work truck, maybe a mining company or the government. And this was the same. It was a government sort of truck. And these two guys were stuck completely. And like we sometimes talk about with guys, there's only 2 settings for the throttle, off and on. And so they were just full throttle or they would stop.
And they had taken like the floor mats out because there's nothing else around. So they were trying to like do that. And I think when we pulled up, they had a teeny tiny little piece of rope, but it was so small, paracord almost, I think is basically what it was, that they were like, here, can you pull us?
Please. And so we pulled them. I think we ended up using our strap.
I think we might have tried, because it was flat ground. They had just dug themselves in. They really refused to take any air out.
So yeah, I was menos aire, you know, my Spanish was this much better. and I was trying to get them to air down the tires, and they're like, no, we'll get in trouble. Like, it was a big deal. Do not air down the tires because we'll get in trouble. And in their minds, if you air down the tire, you will get a flat.
Yeah.
And that's what we ran into, even in the US, though. I think a lot of people who don't know think that.
Yep.
And so it was like, okay, this isn't going to work. We're going to get them unstuck, but then we'll just shepherd them back to the road and say, I wouldn't leave the road if I were you, and then we'll let them go on their way.
I think you're good.
But yeah, we got them unstuck, and it was like the moment they got unstuck and we released their truck,
Gone.
full throttle, rooster tails over each dune. You'd see, like it's the Dakar Rally, you would see rooster tails of sand shooting, and I was like, oh my God, that poor truck. And they were catching air because they were like, we're not getting stuck again.
Yeah, they were not taking any chances now of like slowing down or it was pretty hilarious.
And then one of their tires had about 10 less PSI because I had started doing that, and they had then been like, no, don't do it.
Yeah.
And so they made it back to the road and they took off, and it was just the most strange moment. They were super nice, of course, but they were like, they were at work, they had gotten stuck.
They were freaked out that they had gotten their work truck stuck and that they were out here and probably doing something that they shouldn't have been doing, you know?
Maybe, maybe leaving the roads prohibited, and like they had to play, and now they were like, oh my gosh, we're gonna get fired. And so they got back on the road, they took off, and then we went out back into the dunes and sat there and had one of our great camps. I mean, it was so beautiful, and we had sort of interacted with somebody in a limited fashion and then gone right back to complete remoteness for several days after that point. And it was just such a neat thing. There's certain moments that, you know, if I were in the Glamis sand dunes, which is, Glamis is the big sand dunes, or Imperial Sand Dunes is the official name, in like Southern California, Southern Arizona, massive set of sand dunes, and we interacted with somebody, it'd be great. But I wouldn't be unexpected.
No.
But to be out in the middle of the Paracas dunes and then go, man, we haven't seen anyone in a couple days.
We saw no one else after that.
It was super cool to like have all this intense action happen.
Yeah.
Then be super appreciative, take off, and then we went and parked in the dunes and started cooking dinner and went, man, this is wild. I can't believe how this trip unfolds and what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
You know.
I love the sort of desert cultures too. Like when we were in Tunisia in the Sahara, and we had a desert camp, and so we were just in the middle of nowhere, and Tim and I had walked out just to try and get some pictures. And unfortunately, I don't know if I have video of this because the memory card had corrupted, so a lot of the Tunisia footage I lost, unfortunately. But we had gone out and we were, you know, just getting pictures of camp and just enjoying that we were like in the middle of this giant desert. It was really cool. And off in the distance we saw like a truck, and they saw us and stopped, and we were like, uh-oh. I think they didn't see our camp. They don't know. Are we just out here like, help us, you know? But they stopped and they took the time, and we were a ways off. So of course we walked out to them and we were like, we're fine. And we're just
once we saw them stop, I said, you know, we have to walk to them now.
Yeah, we can't just
disappear,
turn around and disappear.
because what if they look for us now for the next few hours? And our camp was hidden several dunes. Yeah. You know, maybe a half mile back that way. So we walked towards them, and it was like, we need to go make sure they know we're okay.
They had stopped. They were like, oh, okay, you're okay. You know, like, it was just so kind that someone thinks like that. And, part of it is being in a very remote, harsh climate. So it was cool to be able to, in this situation, give back.
I think there's something about that, is putting yourself in a somewhat exposed situation where you're remote, where actually life or death can happen more easily and it is more dangerous. The way two humans react to each other in that situation is universal. Yep. And so that's what I like about it, is they know if they overheated their engine, they could be in big trouble. And so when they saw two people walking, they knew we could be in trouble. Yep. And so everyone kind of acts the same everywhere all over the world. But when you're in the middle of the city, you know, it's a bit different because there's a lot more going on. It could, you know, I just had a bad day at the office. Okay. Yep. There's a lot going on that you don't know about. But when you're out in the middle of the Sahara, or wherever in the Amazon jungle, you all know this could be dangerous for all of us. Yeah. And you check on each other, and I don't know, that was like a common denominator that leveled the playing field for anybody to sort of meet each other on the best possible terms. Because you okay? Yeah, you okay? Do you need water? No. Do you need water? And you would just help each other out, part ways, and go, that was a perfect experience.
Yeah.
And then go on about your life.
Yeah, it really was. All right, number 5 is in the salt flats of Bolivia.
Yeah.
And we were traveling again with Tim and Shannon, Planet Overland, and we were just exploring the salt flats. And it's one of the coolest places I've been in the world. It's just so unique and so interesting. And so we were just camping on the little like islands that are out there. It was beautiful.
Yeah, so there's like touristy islands, and then there are the ones no one goes to. And the touristy ones are worth it, but there's like someone there trying to set up a little shop or sell something. So we decided we wanted to go to the lesser visited ones and just explore those. You can take your truck. We're driving at like 60, 65 miles an hour across the salt. Put it on cruise control. If your truck drives straight, which Goose did, let your hands off the wheel and just like a boat, it's like autopilot. It just drives.
And you just point in the direction of like an island that you see out there.
Yeah.
And
the distances are so far. Yeah. Literally an hour of 65 miles an hour pointed at a random point on the map. And then I look at my phone and I go, oh, you know, we're a little off. So we're actually going to come in a little north of that island, and you can kind of readjust. But it was much more like a boat.
Yeah, it was a crazy experience.
Yeah.
Like a little bit stressful because you don't want to hit like a wet patch of the salt. But we were there at really a great time where there weren't, it was pretty
mostly dry.
Yeah.
There's been some other travelers who I've watched videos of with 2 inches of water, and now it's beautiful. But now you want to be in a rental truck because that 1 or 2 inches of water is like glass for your photography.
It looks really cool in a picture.
But it's much more salty than even ocean water, right? Because it's literally a salt flat that has a little bit of a flood above it. So it is the most destructive water you could imagine, and it'll fry people's electrical systems. We were glad that it was bone dry, but we had heard that there was this mud beneath the surface, as you'd expect on a dry lake.
Yeah.
And we hadn't hit any of it yet.
Nope.
We found this really cool little island, and we were looking at different places to camp, and the wind can be brutal there. So you want to kind of tuck up next to an island.
Yeah.
And so we started getting a little closer to this island, and there's something about the transition from the little bit of land sticking up through the salt and then the dry salt flat.
It's like the
right
mud
in between.
and then the salt and then like dry ground is up there, you know.
And when his truck went in, it was so complete and so thick.
Yeah.
And he had the wheel turn and was trying to come out of it and literally dug a trench that was getting deeper as he drove along.
Oh, and it was
3 tires were, or at least 2 were on solid ground.
Stickiest mud, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
never-ending mud too. Yeah, it was crazy, and I think Goose benefited from having really big fat tires that like had been aired down, so he was very like he could float over the top pretty well.
Yeah.
And so that's why we were able to yank him out without getting Goose stuck as well.
But I know the first time I gave his truck a tug, and it's a Range Rover Classic, pretty heavy truck, and nothing really happened. And so I had to really give it quite a bit more of a tug.
We were just like dragging him, making
it deeper and deeper, and I was like, oh geez.
This could be bad.
And I knew if we sunk in, you would see out on the, near the islands,
see the evidence,
you would see the spots where someone had gotten stuck and dug out, and you'll see the photos of commercial equipment they'll send out at great cost to recover you.
Yeah.
So we were glad to get recovered. His truck was so filthy that we paid for the best power wash ever.
Yeah. Which, by the way, was one of the dogs that I wanted to take home so badly was at that little pressure washer place. He was the cutest dog ever. I will remember forever.
She'll remember him.
He was
forever.
so cute.
But it was awesome. And then that island, once we did get onto it on a safer route.
Yes.
I mean, there was petroglyphs.
We found some
there was
pottery. Yeah.
I mean, people had inhabited these islands in this massive salt plain, which had to have been absolutely brutal. For who knows how long, but it was just an amazing experience. So that's one
that was a place that I could stay and take pictures, be it of like us playing with like the distances from the camera and
these
like,
shots here,
and just it's just so unique, and the beauty of it is pretty incredible.
It was one of those, I would say, most everything that people said you gotta see the baby. When are you gonna see the baby? Whatever, you know, on this trip through Central South America, you gotta check out blah blah blah. 99% were like a bit of a letdown, you know, it's like, don't meet your heroes, or people build it up a little too much. The Lagunas route, whatever, it's just a bumpy road and not hard. You'll see Toyota Corollas on it. It's not the Lagunas route, but this one lived up completely. And I think because you can sort of make it your own adventure.
Yep, totally.
Once you're on the salt, you'll see these black highways, and that's actual tread from people's tires that has rubbed off on that sort of harsh salt, and that's the tour trucks. And they go to the same spots, they show people things, and then they leave. And you can take those sort of blackened highways on the white salt and go to all the tour spots.
Yep.
Or you can just literally turn off of it if it's dry.
At your own risk, yeah.
and just put the cruise control on and like a boat go, yeah, it looks like we're 45 minutes from this island or an hour.
Yeah.
Let's just drive that way and see what we see.
Yeah.
And then it becomes your own adventure. And that's what we loved about it, I think. So those are sort of our top 5 for whatever reason. I don't know why they stuck with us both.
It's so hard to pick top 5s of anything for us because we have so many more that we could talk about.
But there's so many other recoveries. We recovered people we were traveling with. We recovered strangers. It was a good time. And then there's so many we didn't even get on video too, because it was, 100 degrees and you just thought, hey, let's help these people out. And you went about your day.
Now, let's just do it. Yeah.
But yeah, we had a lot of good different ones, which are playing on the screen right now.
Yeah. And some of them, like the Transpantanera, that was in the previous episode, so I'll link that previous episode. If you like this episode, go watch that episode. But we recovered several rental cars on that muddy drive.
Yep. That was fun. It was one of those things I learned long ago going down into Baja, and I remember in the middle of the night seeing a guy holding up a gas can, and I thought, I get no bad feelings about this. And I'm a college kid from California, and I my whole life I had been told the same things everyone else is told about Mexico, and so, but I'd been going down there long enough already for different things that I thought, no, I'm turning around. I don't feel any sort of bad gut feeling.
In fact,
and I gave the guy some fuel, and he was just shocked. He goes, "A gringo stopping? What are you, crazy?" I was like, no, it's fine. And I felt good.
Yeah.
And I thought, yeah, I need to do more of that. And this trip was, that was a big part of the trip.
Yeah. It's funny, it just made me think of that when you said that, but on our first trip ever together, which was like
it was our second date. Our first date was a normal date.
Yeah, and then
second date was a week in Baja.
But I remember we were driving down, a dirt road, and there were 2 guys, and we saw their car, and then after a little while we saw them, and they were walking because something, I don't remember if they ran out of gas or it broke down or whatever.
Yep.
It's really hot, and they're in the middle of the desert, and so we were like, Tim was like, you good with this? I was like, yeah, let's, the bed was a platform in the back, just like we have the truck set up now. And so we just...
2 guys were laying on the bed behind us.
Chatting with us.
And they were chatting and laughing.
Our friends that were with us thought we were insane. They're like, what, you're picking them up? I'm like, don't do that.
Yeah. Well, it was the middle of the peninsula, so you're not near either ocean. It's a horrible place to be stuck. You could easily die. They're walking with soda bottles with rope tied around them for water. So we tell them to hop in the truck, and we give them a ride to Old Coco's Corner then.
Coco's Corner.
And so we get them in the truck for an hour or something like that. I look back, and they're videoing us on their cell phones, and they go, oh yeah, our wives are never going to believe that a couple of gringos picked us up. Yeah. And I'm going, well, I got a video of you. You're the Mexican guys who we picked up in Baja.
Yeah.
And it was a good time, and it was just one of those things that reinforced that you got to listen to your gut, even if it seems on the surface crazy.
Yeah.
Your gut will tell you. It'll scream and yell at you if something is sketchy.
Absolutely.
And we've always had that, I think.
And we've had really nothing but good experiences,
Yeah, I can't think of, the only times my gut screamed at me is certain towns in the world we've been in.
Yeah.
And no one can even bring their head up and look you in the eye, or they won't respond to you, and you go, okay, I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
But these people are going through something, and something's happening. We'll just move on. And that's the worst.
Yep.
But everyone else has just been amazing.
Yeah. So I think that's all.
I think that ends it. Thanks for coming along on these longer talks. I'm stoked that some of you like it.
Yeah, it's really fun for us.
Yeah, and it's fun for us to reminisce and go over it, especially while we're working so hard right now. So we're super excited to finish up work at some point soon and head off on the next adventure. But until then, we'll probably do a few more of these.
Yeah.
So let us know again what topics and what things you have questions about, or what sort of top 5 lists you'd like to see.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.